The last stand of trust, the night sky over the alien city was painted with fire and smoke. Bright neon signs that once welcomed travelers now flickered weakly, throwing broken light onto empty streets. The sound of distant explosions shook the ground, and every corner smelled of burning metal. Kalira, the alien princess, ran through the narrow alleys, her royal robe torn and soaked from the cold rain. Her breath was sharp, her eyes wide with fear. She clutched a small crystal in her hand, hiding it close to her chest as if it was her own heartbeat. Only a week ago, Kalira had been surrounded by advisors, guards, and friends. She had believed her people were loyal, that her council would protect her at any cost. But that belief shattered when her own generals betrayed her. They accused her of treason, blaming her for the collapse of the empire. Even her family turned away, sealing the palace gates and leaving her to the streets. Now the soldiers of her own world hunted her like a criminal. The rain mixed with tears on her cheeks as she moved between shadows. She remembered the last words her father said before he vanished from the court. The crystal must be protected, no matter what. She never knew why it was so important, only that it carried the hope of her dying homeworld. And now she was the only one left who could protect it. Her heart pounded as she reached an open plaza. The glow of search drones swept across the area, scanning for movement. She hid behind a broken market stall, her breathing shallow. The sound of heavy boots echoed in the distance. Soldiers were closing in. Kalira knew she couldn't outrun them for long. Her legs trembled from exhaustion, but her mind screamed at her to keep moving. Then she saw them. 3 armed soldiers in black armor stepped into the plaza, their weapons raised. The rain gleamed on their helmets, making them look like faceless machines. One of them shouted, "Princess Kalira, surrender the crystal and you may live." Her grip on the crystal tightened. She knew they were lying. Surrender meant death. As they advanced, a figure stepped out from the shadows behind her, a tall man, wearing battered combat armor that was clearly not of her world. The armor was scratched and burned, marked by battles long past. In his hands, he carried a strange weapon, heavy and worn, yet steady. The soldiers froze for a moment, surprised to see him. "You want the princess?" The man's voice was cold and sharp. "Come and get her." Without waiting for an answer, he fired. The sound of the shot echoed across the plaza. One soldier fell instantly, sparks flying from his armor. The other 2 turned their weapons toward the stranger, but he was already moving. He rolled to the side, firing again, forcing them to dive for cover. Kalira watched in shock. No one had stood between her and her hunters before, not since the betrayal. She didn't even know who he was. But in that moment, he was the only shield she had. The battle was quick but brutal. The stranger moved with the precision of someone who had fought all his life. Within moments, the plaza was silent, except for the rain. The soldiers lay unmoving, their weapons scattered across the wet ground. The man turned toward her. For a second, Kalira thought he might be another enemy, but then he lowered his weapon and gave a small, almost tired smile. "You're safe now, princess. If you trust me," he said, his voice steady. She took a step back, unsure. "How do you know who I am?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I know more than that," he replied. "I know why they want you dead, and I know what that crystal can do." Her eyes narrowed. If he truly knew the crystal's power, he could be as dangerous as her enemies. But she had no choice. The city was closing in on her. The sound of distant sirens grew louder. More soldiers would arrive soon, and she was too tired to keep running. "What's your name?" she asked. "Reeve," he said simply. "Captain Reeve, formerly of the Terran Vanguard." Terran, that meant he was human. She had heard of his kind, travelers from a distant blue planet. Most humans kept to their own star systems, rarely interfering in alien wars, so why was one here, risking his life for her? She looked into his eyes. They were not the cold eyes of a mercenary, nor the calculating gaze of a spy. They were the eyes of someone who had seen loss, someone who had decided at some point that protecting another life was worth more than his own. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, still unsure. "Because everyone else has betrayed you," he said. "And I don't like seeing good people die." The sound of approaching footsteps snapped her back to reality. Reeve glanced toward the alley, then offered his hand. "Come on, Princess, we've got to move." For a long moment, Kalira hesitated. Every lesson she had learned warned her not to trust strangers, but every instinct told her that if she stayed, she would die. Finally, she placed her hand in his. The rain poured harder as they ran together into the shadows, somewhere deep in her chest. She felt a spark of something she had not felt in days. Hope. Stranger with a past. The rain had not stopped since they left the plaza. Water dripped from broken pipes above the narrow tunnels as Kalira followed Reeve through the darkness. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of rust and wet stone. Her footsteps echoed softly, but his were almost silent, moving with the caution of a man who had walked through danger many times before. They reached a sealed metal door. Reeve placed his hand against a scanner, and with a groan of old machinery, the door slid open. Inside was a small room lit by dim yellow lights, the walls covered with maps and scattered tools. It looked more like a workshop than a safe house, yet it felt secure. Reeve motioned for her to sit on a crate while he checked a console in the corner. Kalira stayed near the door, keeping her distance. She still wasn't sure if she could trust him. "Why? Help me," she asked again, this time with sharper suspicion in her voice. Reeve didn't turn around as he replied, "Because I know what it's like to be hunted by your own." Those words made her pause. He continued, his voice calm but carrying a weight. "That could not be faked. I was a soldier once, fought in wars I didn't believe in, followed orders that destroyed lives until I walked away." He finally looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something beyond pity. It was understanding. "Your people aren't the first to betray their own leaders," he added. She studied him carefully. His armor was old, patched in different places with metal from various worlds. The weapon by his side was human-made, but had alien modifications. It was clear he had traveled far and fought in many places. But there was still the question that burned in her mind. How did he know about the crystal? "You said you know what this is," she said, holding up the small glowing crystal. Reeve stepped closer but didn't try to take it. "That," he said, "is a life seed, a piece of ancient biotech. It can restore an entire planet's atmosphere, purify poisoned lands, even grow food in wastelands." Her heart tightened. This was the first time anyone had explained its power. "And that," he added, "is why your enemies will never stop chasing you." Before she could reply, a low rumble shook the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the console in the corner flashed red. "They found us," Reeve muttered, grabbing his weapon. He moved to the wall and pressed a hidden switch, revealing a narrow side tunnel. "This way, hurry," Kalira followed, the sound of her heart matching the rhythm of her footsteps. They moved quickly through the twisting passage, lit only by Reeve's wrist lamp behind them. The sound of boots and metallic clicks echoed, soldiers and drones closing in. The tunnel ended at a massive underground chamber. In the center stood an old spacecraft, its hull scarred and painted in faded colors. It wasn't beautiful, but it looked strong. "This is your ship?" she asked, a little disbelief in her voice. Reeve gave a small smirk. "She may be ugly, but she's faster than anything they have." As they stepped inside, Kalira noticed the crew. 3 figures busy at their stations. One was a tall, 4-armed alien with silver skin, another a small lizard-like mechanic, and the third was a hooded figure who didn't speak. "This is Princess Kalira," Reeve introduced quickly. "She's under my protection now." The crew didn't react much, but the hooded one turned slightly, as if studying her. Kalira felt a strange unease. But there was no time to think about it. The ship's engines roared to life, and they lifted off, the heavy tunnels shaking as they forced their way out into open skies. Through the cockpit glass, Kalira saw the city shrinking below. Columns of smoke rose into the storm clouds. The moment of relief was short. A warning alarm blared. "Pursuit ships, 3 of them," the silver-skinned pilot said calmly. Reeve strapped himself into the captain's seat. "Hold tight." The ship darted between jagged skyscrapers, dodging blasts of enemy fire. Kalira gripped the edge of her seat as explosions lit the sky behind them. Reeve's hands moved over the controls with precision, weaving through debris like he'd done this 100 times before. Then, in the middle of the chaos, a sharp beep echoed through the cabin. Reeve glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening. "That's not possible," he muttered. Kalira leaned closer. "What is it?" "It's a signal," he said slowly, "coming from inside this ship." Her eyes widened. "You mean someone here is helping them?" Reeve didn't answer, but his gaze shifted toward the hooded crew member. The air in the cabin felt heavier. Kalira's hands tightened around the crystal. She had just escaped betrayal, but now betrayal might be sitting only a few steps away. Hunted through the stars, the enemy ships grew larger on the scanner, their red markers flashing like angry eyes. Kalira sat in the co-pilot's seat, watching the lights on the control panel shift from green to yellow. The hum of the engines filled the cabin, mixed with the low rumble of the storm still raging above the city they had left behind. Reeve's hands moved quickly over the controls, pushing the ship to its limits. "She's holding together," he muttered, almost as if speaking to the ship itself. The silver-skinned pilot, whose name Kalira now knew was Loran, kept glancing at him for instructions. "Enemy ships closing fast," Loran reported calmly. "If we stay in the open sky, they will catch us." Reeve's eyes narrowed. "Then we don't stay in the open," he said, pulling the ship into a sharp dive. Kalira gripped the armrests as the world outside shifted. The clouds broke apart, revealing a vast asteroid belt glittering in the darkness of space. The ship plunged toward it. Weaving between massive spinning rocks, the enemy ships followed, their weapons firing bright streaks of energy that lit the darkness. Every blast that missed them exploded against the asteroids, sending showers of glowing fragments spinning through space. Kalira's heart pounded with every near hit. "How? Are they still behind us?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because someone's telling them exactly where we're going," Reeve replied without looking at her. Her eyes flicked toward the hooded crew member, the one who hadn't spoken since she arrived. The figure stood at the far side of the cabin, unmoving, as if waiting for something. Kalira's grip on the crystal tightened. She had been betrayed once before, and she would not be caught off guard again. The ship twisted sharply to the left, dodging a massive asteroid. The maneuver sent Kalira leaning against Reeve's side, but he didn't react. His focus was fixed ahead. "Loran, take the controls," Reeve ordered suddenly, without hesitation. Loran slid into the captain's seat, his 4 hands working the controls with skill. Reeve unstrapped himself and moved toward the hooded figure. "You've been quiet since we left the city," Reeve said, his voice low. The hooded figure didn't move. Then in a slow motion, the figure reached up and pulled back the hood. Kalira's breath caught. It was a woman, her skin a pale shade of violet, with sharp silver markings running from her forehead down. Her neck, her eyes glowed faintly, but there was no warmth in them. "I told them where you were going," she said simply. Kalira felt her stomach twist. "Why?" Reeve demanded, stepping closer. "Because I don't take orders from humans," the woman replied coldly. "And because I know what that crystal can do. It doesn't belong to her people." Before Reeve could respond, the ship shook violently. A blast had hit their rear shields. Loran shouted over the noise. "Shields at 30%. One more direct hit and we're done." Reeve grabbed the traitor by the collar, pulling her toward the airlock. "Give me one reason not to throw you out into space right now," he growled. The woman's lips curved into a faint smile. "Because you need me to survive the next 5 minutes," she said. Kalira's mind raced. Was she lying? Or did she truly have some advantage they didn't know about? Another blast rocked the ship, alarms screaming in the cabin. Lauren shouted. "They're locking missiles." Reeve hesitated for only a second before shoving the woman into a side seat and locking the restraints. "Talk fast," he said, "or we're all dead." The woman leaned forward, her glowing eyes flicking to Kalira. "The asteroid belt has a hidden passage," she said quickly. "It leads to a gravity well if you take it. The enemy ships will be crushed, but only I know the coordinates." Reeve looked at Lauren, who shrugged. "It's possible. I've heard rumors of such a place." Kalira felt her instincts scream against trusting her, but the enemy ships were already preparing to fire. Reeve made the call. "Give us the coordinates," he said. The woman rattled off a string of numbers, and Lauren punched them into the navigation system. The ship banked sharply, heading toward a cluster of asteroids that looked solid from the outside. At the last moment, a narrow gap appeared, just wide enough for their ship to slide through. The passage was dark, lit only by the faint glow of their running lights. Behind them, the enemy ships followed. Kalira glanced back, her heart racing. They reached the center of the passage, and suddenly the ship shook again, but this time it wasn't from weapons fire. The pull of gravity yanked them downward, spinning the asteroids like marbles. One of the pursuing ships slammed into a rock and exploded. Another was torn apart by the crushing force. The last one tried to escape, but it was dragged into the gravity well and vanished into darkness. Silence filled the cabin. Lauren straightened the ship and guided it out of the passage into open space again. Kalira exhaled slowly, feeling her muscles ache from the tension. Reeve turned to the woman, his eyes still sharp. "This doesn't make you part of this crew," he said. The woman only smirked. "I wouldn't dream of it." But Kalira noticed the way her eyes lingered on the crystal, and in that moment, she knew the danger wasn't gone. It had simply moved closer, asterisk shadows in the crew, the silence. After the battle was heavy. The hum of the engines was the only sound. But it didn't feel peaceful. Kalira sat in the co-pilot seat, the crystal in her hands glowing faintly. She could still feel the traitor's eyes on it. Even though the woman sat strapped to a seat across the cabin, Reeve stood near the navigation console, arms crossed, his gaze shifting between Lauren at the controls and the hooded woman, whose name they now knew was Vera. Lauren's voice broke the silence. "We can't stay in open space for long. The enemy will send more ships," Reeve nodded. "Then we find a place to disappear." Vera's voice was smooth, too calm for someone who had almost been thrown into space minutes ago. "There's an abandoned mining planet nearby, the tunnels. Go deep enough to hide from scanners." Kalira frowned. "And why should we trust you?" Vera smiled faintly. "Because you don't have any other choice." Reeve gave her a cold look but didn't argue. The ship changed course, heading toward the coordinates she provided. Through the cockpit glass, Kalira watched a small planet grow larger, its surface a dull red, scarred with deep craters and broken towers of rock. It looked lifeless, but something about it made her uneasy. They broke through the thin atmosphere, and the ship touched down on a flat plateau surrounded by jagged cliffs. As the engines powered down, the wind outside howled like a warning. Reeve stood and grabbed his weapon. "Lauren, keep the ship ready for launch." "Kalira, stay close to me." The loading ramp lowered, letting in the dry, cold air. The ground was covered in fine red dust that stuck to their boots. The mining facility lay in ruins, rusted metal beams jutting out of collapsed tunnels. Kalira's eyes darted to the shadows. Every dark corner seemed to hide movement. They entered the largest tunnel, their lights cutting through the darkness. The walls were lined with old mining rails, some twisted and broken. In the distance, they heard a faint clicking sound. "What is that?" Kalira whispered. Reeve's grip on his weapon tightened. "Trouble." Shapes emerged from the dark, not soldiers, but machines, tall skeletal mining drones, their metal claws clicking as they moved. Their eyes glowed red. Scanning for intruders, Kalira stepped back, but Reeve pulled her behind a rock outcrop. "These things were left behind when the miners fled," he whispered, "but their programming is simple. Destroy anything that moves." Vera crouched beside them, her expression unreadable. "I can get past them," she said. "But I'll need you to keep them distracted." Reeve shot her a sharp look. "Why should we risk our lives while you sneak off?" She tilted her head. "Because you still have that crystal. And if you die, it dies with you." Before Reeve could reply, one of the drones spotted movement and let out a high-pitched alarm. The others turned toward them, their metal limbs moving faster than expected. "Move!" Reeve shouted, opening fire. The blast echoed through the tunnel, lighting up the dust-filled air. Kalira ducked behind cover as pieces of metal flew past her. Reeve's shots tore through one of the drones, but two more closed in Loran's. Voice came through the comms. "You've got more moving from the east tunnel." "Of course we do," Reeve muttered, pulling Kalira toward a side passage. Vera, meanwhile, had vanished into the darkness. Kalira's instincts told her she wasn't just avoiding the fight. She was after something. "Where is she?" Kalira asked. Reeve didn't answer, but his eyes narrowed. "She's going for the crystal," he said, "or something worse." They fought their way deeper into the tunnels, the sound of metal claws scraping stone following close behind. Finally, they stumbled into a large chamber filled with old mining equipment. Kalira spotted Vera near the far wall, pulling something from a locked storage unit. It wasn't the crystal. It was a black case, small enough to carry, but glowing faintly through its seams. "What is that?" Kalira called out. Vera turned, her smirk illuminated by the case's light. "Something worth more than your little planet," she said. Before Reeve could reach her, a drone dropped from the ceiling, blocking his path. The chamber erupted into chaos, blasts of energy, the screech of tearing metal, and the thud of falling debris. Kalira clutched the crystal, her heart racing. If Vera escaped with that case, it could mean disaster, not just for her world, but maybe for others. Reeve managed to blast the drone aside and charged toward Vera, but she slipped into a narrow tunnel, vanishing from sight. Loran's voice came again through the comms. "Captain, more drones are converging on your location. You need to get out now." Reeve glanced at Kalira, then at the tunnel where Vera had disappeared. His jaw tightened. "Back to the ship," he ordered, though his eyes burned with frustration. They fought their way back through the collapsing tunnels. By the time they reached the ship, Kalira could still hear the distant echo of those clicking claws. The ramp closed, engines roared, and they lifted off into the red sky, leaving the ruins behind. But Kalira knew the shadow in their crew hadn't been left behind at all. It was still with them, moving unseen, waiting for the right moment to strike. The crystal's secret. The hum of the engines filled the cabin, but it wasn't a comforting sound. Kalira sat in the co-pilot's seat, her fingers wrapped tightly around the glowing crystal. The events on the mining planet replayed in her mind, the machines, the collapsing tunnels, and Vera slipping away with that strange black case. She could still feel the tension in the air, as if the whole crew was waiting for the next betrayal. Reeve stood behind Loran at the controls, staring out into the endless stretch of stars. His jaw was tight, his voice low. "We can't keep running without a plan." Kalira looked at him, then at the crystal in her hands. "You said you know what this is," she began, "but I need to hear it in full." Reeve walked over and crouched in front of her. "That crystal isn't just rare," he said. "It's the last life seed in existence." Kalira frowned. "Life seed?" He nodded slowly. "It's ancient biotech, created by a civilization long gone. When activated, it can repair a dying planet's atmosphere, clean poisoned oceans, grow forests where there's only sand. It can save worlds." Her eyes widened. She thought she had understood its importance before, but now it felt even heavier in her hands. "It can't be destroyed," she whispered. Reeve's gaze hardened. "It can be stolen, and in the wrong hands. It can be twisted. It can be used to change a planet into a weapon instead of a home." Kalira's stomach turned. "And Vera knows this?" Reeve nodded. "She knows enough, but she's not the only one after it." Loran glanced over his shoulder, his silver skin catching the dim light. "Captain, we've picked up a signal," he said. "It's a warship, bigger than anything we've faced so far." Kalira felt a chill. "Is it them?" Reeves' expression darkened. "Yes." Her cousin's fleet. Kalira's hands tightened around the crystal. Her cousin, Lord Varen, had been the one who rallied the council against her. He had promised peace to the people, but she knew he only wanted power if he got the crystal. Her homeworld would never be free again. Reeve leaned against the console, thinking fast. "We can't fight that fleet head-on, not with our ship. We'll need another way." Kalira's voice was steady. "We go straight to them," Reeve blinked. "That's suicide." She shook her head. "It's the only way. If we run, they'll chase us forever. But if we take the fight to them, we might have a chance." Before Reeve could reply, the hooded figure of Vera appeared in the doorway to the cockpit. Her voice was calm, almost amused. "You're forgetting something. I know a way onto that flagship without them detecting us." Kalira's instincts screamed not to trust her, but time was running out. "What do you want in return?" Kalira asked. Vera's eyes flicked to the crystal. "To be alive when this is over." The plan was simple in words, deadly in action. They would approach the flagship through the debris field of an old space battle, using the wreckage as cover. From there, they'd latch onto the hull and slip inside through a maintenance port. If it worked, they'd bypass the outer defenses entirely. If it failed, there would be nothing left of them to find. As they neared the debris field, the cabin fell silent. Broken starships floated like ghosts, some still sparking after years in the void. The crew moved quickly, every sound on the ship seeming louder in the stillness of space. Kalira glanced at Reeve, his eyes sharp, his hands steady on his weapon. He had fought his way into her life with no warning, and now she was trusting him with her world's future. The thought both comforted and frightened her. They slipped deeper into the wreckage, the flagship looming ahead like a dark mountain in space. Its massive cannons glowed faintly, scanning the void for threats. But for now, they didn't see the small battered ship drifting among the debris. Vera stepped forward, her hands dancing over the navigation screen. "There," she said, pointing to a faint outline on the hull. "Maintenance port, exactly where I said it would be." Reeve guided the ship toward it, moving so slowly it felt like time had stopped. When the magnetic clamps locked onto the hull, a faint shudder ran through the ship. "This is it," Reeve said quietly. Kalira stood, the crystal held close, her heart pounded. They were about to step onto the enemy's most dangerous ship. A place where betrayal, danger, and death could be waiting around every corner. But she also knew something else. If they succeeded, this could be the moment her world was saved, and if they failed, there would be no second chance. Asterisk truth in the fire. The air inside the flagship was cold and sharp. Kalira's breath came out in small clouds as the hatch sealed shut behind them. The walls of the maintenance corridor were smooth and metallic, lit by faint blue strips along the floor. Every sound, the hum of machinery, the soft creak of metal under their boots, seemed louder in the silence. Reeve moved first, his weapon raised, his steps careful and controlled. Loren followed close behind, scanning for movement with his 4 sharp eyes. Vera was last, but she moved with an ease that made Kalira wonder if she had walked these halls before. The crystal was hidden under Kalira's cloak, but its faint warmth against her chest was a constant reminder of what they carried. "Security patrols pass every 5 minutes, Vera whispered. "We'll have to cross the main corridor before the next one arrives," Reeve nodded. "Move fast, no noise." They slipped through a side hatch into a wider passage. Through the thin metal walls, Kalira could feel the deep vibrations of the ship's engines. It was like walking inside a giant beast, hearing its heartbeat all around them. Halfway across, a voice echoed from ahead. A group of armored soldiers turned the corner, their rifles lifting instantly. The corridor exploded into chaos. Bright flashes of energy fire, the crack of shots hitting metal, the hiss of air vents bursting. Kalira dove behind a support beam, her hands gripping the crystal tightly. Reeve moved into the open, firing with quick, precise bursts. 2 soldiers fell, but more were coming from the far end of the hall. "Loran, cover the left." Reeve barked. The silver-skinned pilot dropped to one knee, his 4 hands firing 2 rifles at once. Kalira caught sight of Vera. She wasn't firing. Instead, she was working at a wall panel, her fingers moving over controls with frightening speed. "What are you doing?" Kalira shouted. "Getting us a shortcut," Vera replied. A door beside her slid open, revealing a narrow maintenance shaft. "In here," she called. They dashed inside, the sound of soldiers shouting echoing behind them. The shaft was dim and hot, pipes lining the walls, steam hissing from small cracks. Reeve took the lead, moving fast. Kalira followed, her heart pounding in her ears. Halfway through, Reeve slowed and turned back to her. "Kalira, there's something you need to know," he said, his voice low. She frowned. "Now?" "We're being hunted." He shook his head. "You need to hear it before we reach Varen." Her chest tightened. "What is it?" she asked. Reeve hesitated, his eyes shadowed by something heavy. "Years ago, I fought in the border wars against your people. I swore I'd kill your father." The words hit her like a physical blow. Her steps faltered, her mind racing. "You hated him?" she whispered. "I hated what he did," Reeve said firmly. "I saw villages burned, civilians driven from their homes. I saw orders signed with his seal that destroyed entire colonies." Kalira's voice was tight. "And now you protect his daughter?" Reeve's gaze didn't waver. "Because you're not him. Because I've seen who you are, and I believe you can save your people without becoming what he was." For a moment, the corridor seemed to shrink around her. Part of her wanted to turn away, to walk back into the soldiers' fire rather than trust him. But another part, the part that had seen him stand between her and death, whispered that his words were truth. She looked away, her voice quiet. "We finish this first." They reached the end of the shaft, and Vera pried open another hatch. Beyond it was a massive chamber filled with glowing control towers. This was the flagship's power core. Its heart, energy crackled through the air, the deep thrum vibrating in their bones. Vera pointed toward a guarded doorway on the far side. "That leads straight to Varen's command room," she said. Reeve glanced at Kalira. "Once we go through there, there's no turning back." Kalira's hand brushed the crystal beneath her cloak. Her father's shadow might follow her forever, but the future of her world was still hers to shape. She met Reeve's eyes, her voice steady. "Then we don't turn back." They moved toward the door. But the moment they stepped into the open, alarms wailed. Dozens of soldiers poured in from hidden entrances, their weapons raised. The air filled with the roar of gunfire and the blaze of energy bolts. Reeve took the front. Loran covered the flanks. Kalira stayed low, clutching the crystal like her life depended on it. Because it did, Vera vanished into the chaos, moving like a shadow. Kalira's eyes followed her for a split second, and she saw something chilling. Vera was heading not toward the fight, but toward the command door, the hero's choice. The alarm screamed through the power core. Red warning lights pulsed across the walls, turning every shadow into a flash of danger. Kalira's heartbeat pounded in her ears as she ducked behind a support pillar. The crystal warm against her chest, Reeve fired into the wave of soldiers, each shot buying them only seconds. Loran fought at his side, his 4 hands moving with perfect precision. Then Kalira saw her. Vera, slipping past the chaos, her violet skin glowing faintly in the red light. She was moving toward the command door, the black case she had stolen on the mining planet still in her grasp. Kalira's instincts screamed. Vera wasn't just going for her cousin, she was going for something else entirely. "Reeve!" Kalira shouted, pointing. He turned, saw Vera, and cursed under his breath. "Loran, hold them off!" he ordered before breaking from cover. Kalira ran after him, the 2 of them weaving through the chaos toward the door. They reached the Threshold just as Vera forced it open with a stolen access chip. Inside was the command chamber, vast, lined with towering screens showing every corner of the ship. At the center stood Lord Varen, tall, armored in deep silver, his crown-like helm casting shadows over his sharp features. His eyes locked on Kalira immediately, a slow, mocking smile forming. "Dear cousin," he said, his voice smooth and cold, "I see you've brought me exactly what I wanted." His gaze flicked to the crystal under her cloak. "Hand it over, and I might even let you live." Kalira stepped forward, her chin high despite the fear in her chest. "You betrayed our people," she said. "You poisoned our world with your greed." Varen's smile didn't falter. "I saved our world from weak rulers, and with that crystal, I will make it strong." Reeve moved between them, his weapon raised. "That crystal doesn't belong to you," he said, his voice steady. Varen's eyes narrowed. "Ah." The human, the soldier who once swore to kill my uncle, now playing bodyguard to his daughter. How noble. And how stupid. Before Kalira could react, Vera stepped forward. Placing the black case on the command table, it hissed open, revealing a dark sphere pulsing with faint light. Varen's eyes lit up. "Ah, the failsafe. You've done well." Kalira's stomach dropped. Vera had been working with him all along. Suddenly, the sphere began to hum, its glow intensifying. "What is that?" Kalira demanded. Vera smirked. "A planetary override. It can rewrite the Life Seed's programming, turn it from a healer into a weapon." Kalira's pulse raced. If Varen combined the sphere with the crystal, he could destroy entire worlds instead of saving them. Reeve glanced at her, his expression calm but his eyes sharp, the kind of look that said, "I have a plan." In one smooth motion, Reeve reached for the crystal. "Kalira, when I say run," you whispered. She shook her head. "Not without you. Trust me," he said. His voice low. Varen stepped closer, his hand outstretched. Reeve tossed the crystal high into the air, and for a heartbeat, everyone's eyes followed it. In that split second, he lunged forward, slamming into the table, his hand gripping the dark sphere. He ripped it free, pulling it toward himself. As Varen roared in fury, Kalira caught the crystal as it fell into her hands. "Run!" Reeve shouted. The floor shook as energy burst from the damaged sphere. Vera staggered back, shielding her face from the flash. Kalira ran toward the exit. The crystal clutched tightly, but she looked back. Reeve was still inside, holding the sparking sphere as Varen advanced on him. "No!" she cried, but Lauren appeared in the doorway, grabbing her arm. "We have to go now," he said, pulling her into the corridor behind them. The command chamber filled with light as the sphere overloaded. They raced back through the corridors. Alarms blaring, the ship shuddering under internal explosions. The maintenance hatch loomed ahead, and they dove inside, sealing it behind them. The moment they detached from the flagship's hull, a massive explosion tore through its side. Fire and debris spiraled into space, the shockwave rocking their small ship. Kalira pressed her hands against the glass, searching the wreckage for any sign of Reeve. Her chest ached. Had he survived? Or had she lost the one person who had never betrayed her? Then, through the static of the comms, a voice crackled to life. "Told you I'd keep you safe." "Princess," Reeve's voice said, faint but steady. Her eyes filled with relief as a battered escape pod drifted into view when they pulled him aboard. He was burned, exhausted, but alive. Kalira held the crystal between them, its light warm and steady. Her voice was soft. "You didn't just save me, you saved our world." Reeve gave a tired smile. "Let's go plant that thing before someone else tries to steal it." The ship turned toward Kalira's homeworld, the dark void ahead now holding the promise of life. For the first time in a long time, Kalira felt hope and trust, burning brighter than fear.